There are two very different opinions about what's happening in Portland right now, so let's bring in Sinclair Political Commentator Ameshia Cross and member of the President's National Security Education Board, host of America First on Salem Radio, and Sinclair Media contributor, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Let's start with Dr. Gorka. So Portland's happening. We see what's going on with the feds. The president defends it, saying if these mayors and these cities are failing at what they're supposed to do, keeping the citizens and the businesses open and safe, it's time for the feds to move in. You agree with that? I take it, Sebastian.
Look, somebody has to protect America's citizens. And if the local Democrat-controlled governments, the local Democrat commissions of police refuse to do so, then it's up to the president. When you have federal buildings set ablaze night after night, in some cases with federal employees inside them, who's going to protect them if not the president and the FPS and the DHS forces that have been deployed? We've seen anarchy on the streets of America for more than 7 weeks. It has to end, Eric. It has to end.
And Ameshia, you know, what about this issue has the left up in arms? Or what, Ted Wheeler, mayor of Portland, saying, get out of my city. Why do you not want that? Why do they not want the help from the feds?
Because there's an amplification of violence that has started since the federal intervention. What we know is that Portland is largely a peaceful city. We have not heard of before, recent times, any of those types of situations happening in Portland. Portland had protests for over 6.5 weeks that were largely peaceful, that were also about 40 people. Media didn't even cover these protests. When the feds came in, that's when we saw larger crowds. That's when we saw a lot of aggression used towards protesters. That's when we noticed that, hey, this President Trump, knows that his poll ratings are going down nationally, and he thinks he can win on this law and order super aggressive messaging strategy that makes it look like cities are chaotic and out of control. Well, that is his plan of coasting to re-election.
Okay, but Misha, you call it peaceful protests, and this is a really, really important point here. Breaking windows, spray painting walls of buildings, keeping citizens off the streets, that's not peaceful protest. Peaceful protest is having a place, saying your piece, letting the cameras roll on it, getting the message out. Portland hasn't been peaceful for 6 weeks prior to this.
Portland also didn't have an authoritarian-like regime march in until a week and a half ago to actually try to, in their own way, create these viral videos around aggression. You have these Gestapo-like tactics where people are getting snatched up, where there are people there who have been sent in by the feds, who are not identifying themselves at all, who are there in camo, who are using all types of abuses against these individuals. And quite frankly, America should be finding grave problem and grave issue with this, because it is a violation of the rights of these protesters and, quite frankly, a violation of everything that our federal government should stand for.
All right, Sebastian, I'm going to agree with Ameshia on one piece of this, that we saw earlier in the week, we saw in the NYPD in an unmarked van pull up, officers weren't marked, and they were grabbing people, protesters, whatever they were, violent, Antifa, whatever, these anarchists, and they're throwing them into vans. That's got to be a little scary, too. Is there a middle ground on this?
Well, if you read the tweets from the NYPD today, everybody they arrested had outstanding warrants. I'm quite disgusted at what Ameshia has just said. So Gestapo tactics, you do know you're talking about the Third Reich. I guess you don't care about the black people who've been killed since George Floyd was killed by that police officer. I guess David Dorn, I guess Officer Underwood don't matter to you. There were no DHS forces on the ground. There were no federal agents in California or Minneapolis when those men were killed. But you just don't care because you have political points to score, just like Nancy Pelosi and Jerry Nadler. It is wrong to do that, Ameshia. It's just wrong.
Final word to Ameshia.
Sebastian, you can't tell me what it feels like to be someone who has grown up in a community and has lived in a community.
I didn't.
Die every single day. Yes, you are.
You're doing identity politics. You're just doing identity politics.
An argument that is problematic. I have stood by and spoke and held parents while their children were gunned down. So do not.
Answer David Dorn. Talk to me about DHS and David Dorn. Talk to me.
Ameshia, just finish your thought, please.
There is an economic crisis. There's a poverty crisis. We know the causes of gun violence specifically in some of our urban communities, and they have existed for decades. This is not new. And putting federal in those areas is not going to stop it at all. This is not a partisan fight. This is one where we need to have major economic overhaul. And I'm sorry, I don't care which party the economic overhaul comes from. We know what it takes to rebuild these communities, and it is not federal troops.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there.
Democrats
It's a very, very heated topic, obviously, and we talk about it every week. And you know what? This story just continues to feed the interest of the American people, so we'll continue to bring it to you. Ameshia Cross, thank you very much. Sebastian Gorka, thank you both.